Now, I want to talk to y'all real quick about AOC, KGB. KGB AOC. So, everybody at this point knows how I feel about AOC. I don't got time for kids out here playing dress up activists. People are actually dying in the streets. People are actually being bombed overseas. And so, rape victims are being thrown under the bus by people like AOC while she plays Miss Self-Righteous all over Twitter. So I don't got time for her nonsense, really. And also, once again, I remember how Obama got to where he got, to the point where he was untouchable. Remember, prior to him becoming, at least accountable to the progressive movement to a certain degree, only because of he keeps coming at Bernie's neck. But before that, he was untouchable. He was also untouchable before he ran. And look what happened. Look how that ended up for us. Okay. Cadodus. So this is somehow different from 2016 general election. I can't see that link. But if that's a reference to Jill Stein's lawsuits, it actually is not that different, because Jill Stein's lawsuits exposed major discrepancies. Also in Milwaukee County, what a surprise, right? In Philadelphia area and in Wayne County, Detroit area. So let's check this out real quick. So AOC says that, is anyone archiving these Trump sycophants for when they try to downplay or deny their complicity in the future? I foresee decent probability of many deleted tweets, writings, and photos in the future. What? Like, now some like weirdo blue check on Twitter that's always trying to be a little edgy. Like, I get that. Like, people just say things like to be edgy on Twitter all the time. Yeah, except for they don't have 9 million followers and the power of Congress and ambitions to run for president, clearly. This is some dystopian stuff. Y'all aware of this, right? This is like, y'all think I'm joking when I say KGB. No, this is literally what the KGB did. This is what the CIA does. Whenever this, people like Henry Wallace, and if you were an avid supporter of Henry Wallace, you could be thrown on a list. Henry Wallace was right before the CIA, but like when the CIA was created, you could be thrown on a list. Martin Luther King was thrown on a list. The Black Panthers, everybody was thrown on the list. This after the Patriot Act, people were thrown on a list. There's a bunch of journalists that were thrown on a list. So what she's advocating for is to keep a list of people who, for better or worse, supported the person they choose to support. Not even, no, matter of fact, you don't even got to just support. You just got to be complicit. Somebody said, this is fascism. This is fascistic behavior. This is authoritarian behavior. You can hold people accountable for what they've done, right? People are also capable of being redeemed, but you can also hold people accountable for what they've done. And it doesn't require a government official advocating for an archive of a list of people who supported a previous president. That's scary. But you know what? Y'all know I got a good memory too. And I don't keep like lists, but I keep an archive in my head because I'm paid like that. And so I had to respond to her. And my response did, pretty well. So my response was this. Should we put your name on a list for defending a rapist like Joe Biden and lying on NPR, claiming that Tara Reade never said she wasn't voting for Biden, just to avoid the embarrassing hypocrisy you've demonstrated after your fake partisan outrage during the Kavanaugh hearings? Interesting. Now, I think that tweet has like 3,000 likes now, something like that. But I'm sure she ain't gonna respond to that. You know, I'm not cool enough for AOC. But I just found that interesting because I distinctly remember her comments saying that even if you believe Kavanaugh should have due process, you should be primaried. And although I'm not rendering any judgment on anybody who believes one way or the other, that's not my point. My point is, that's what you said. That's what AOC said. That was her line of logic. In the moment that the Me Too movement came back around full circle, as we knew it would, because the Democratic Party tends to do things like that, they set themselves up for failure years in advance. We knew that this was going to come back around because a lot of us knew that Joe Biden was going to be a problem in the near future. And lo and behold, not only did AOC become a rape apologist, but she started throwing the victims under the bus, lying about their political intentions just to save herself from embarrassment, to help her climb the political ladder. Interesting. Not to mention, like, what? If you want to talk about being complicit, didn't you, when you were screaming defund ICE, didn't you literally vote to fund ICE? Didn't that happen? I'm not crazy, right? That happened. She literally voted to fund ICE. And when Tulsi tried to introduce the No More Presidential Wars Act to make sure that Trump could be held accountable if he had committed an act of war without going through Congress to do so, weren't you quiet as hell on that? And then you were also quiet when the bill got remanded back to the House because it was in the NDAA. That's how everybody was like, oh my God, I can't believe we actually got that in there. And Trump saw that shit, was like, no. Sent it back to the House. And guess what? The Democrats, not the Republicans, probably some Republicans too, but mostly the Democrats because they have the majority. The Democrats took out the No More Presidential Wars provision that would have meant automatic impeachment for Donald Trump if he would have, not only Donald Trump, any president, if they were to commit any act of war without consulting Congress first. And AOC was silent on that. Wouldn't that be complicit in war crimes? The same war crimes that Trump and more than likely Biden will commit. When Tulsi introduced a bill to end the war in Syria also, and AOC was complicit because, well, we're still in Syria. The war's still going on and the legislation didn't get passed. And you almost got to imagine if AOC used her vast audience to discuss that, then it probably would have been passed or at least discussed, and people would be held accountable for not introducing that or for not supporting that. And speaking of election integrity, when the Securing America's Elections Act was introduced, hand counted paper ballots, mandatory election audits, open source blockchain software that would not be proprietary. In other words, not owned by a private company, but anyone who had the source code, which would be given out to everybody, could check to make sure their vote counted, check to see where the votes were at, check to see if anybody had been tampering with it, et cetera, et cetera. Man, AOC was silent on that, and now look at where we're at. And didn't Biden author the Patriot Act and is responsible for destroying black lives across the country with the 94 crime bill and was a literal segregationist and said he didn't want his kids going to school with what did he say? Oh no, excuse me. He said he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle. So based on that logic, AOC, your name needs to be on a few lists. Your name needs to be on a few lists for you to have the living audacity to pretend as if you're just so ridiculous. I'm so outraged by Trump. Yeah, you know what some of us who are outraged by Trump's actions try to do? Like support a legislation that prevented him from doing the shit. Support a legislation that was going to hold him accountable for doing the shit. Actually, advocate for the people who are going to fight. Not only Trump, but the system that put him there. Not just give up the moment you get cheated. Not throw your allies under the bus for your own personal ambition. Not call Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear, sweet baby Jesus. Come on now. You really want to talk about complicity? At this point, you're basically a fascist sympathizer. and you are ridiculously authoritarian. I don't know where you think, like, who do you think you are, bro? Like, you're not anybody but what the media makes you out to be. And eventually, listen, I know how the game goes. Everybody who watched the MCSC network knows we're right about most things years in advance. Years. You take a lot of heat being right about people years in advance. But once again, eventually chickens always come home to roost. Just like we told everybody, we was trying to tell people about Bernie, like, look, man, like the guy, but it ain't looking good. Just like we were trying to warn people about Trump. He's not gonna pardon Julian Assange at the same time his administration is torturing Chelsea Manning. We're telling people about the Green New Deal and how it was weird, it's suspect, and that all of a sudden AOC backed off the Off Fossil Fuels Act that she was running on, and then she introduced this Green New Deal that didn't ban fracking, did nothing to address nuclear waste. And then, of course, she ended up celebrating Mike Levin's and co-sponsoring Mike Levin's legislation. Is it Mike Levin or Zach Levin? One of the two. And is it Zach Levin, I think, from California. And Kamala Harris's electric car bill. Levin is a fracking lobbyist. To make that bill possible, fracking would have been increased tenfold. I'm sure AOC knew that. But that's why she was allowed to support it. Because that's what the lobbyists allowed her to do. Probably told her to do. You know what we should probably do? We should create a list of everybody who supported and legitimized Elizabeth Warren, which caused her to take, 15-20% away from Bernie in states that he would have won. The same guy that you supposedly endorsed. Remember that? Maybe we should start a list of those people. You'll be at the top of that list too. Just be keeping lists. Black Conservative Patriot, thank you very much for the super chat, my man. Just discovered your channel and sub. Keep up the great work. Much love, man. I appreciate you. Sparky. Niko, you have plenty of time to think about it during those lonely nights as the re-education comes. See what you did right there. But the woman lost, bro. She lost it. She's lost it. Like, she is, see, this is the problem, right? So, like, if you understand actual communism versus, like, the caricature of communism that America has used to propagandize the society from wanting actually good policies, like, what AOC is embodying at this point is, like, the caricature of communism, which is not good because everyone, oh, man, she's the most socialist person in Congress. She's the... No, she's not. Not even. First of all, if you want to be honest, she's not. AOC isn't even to the left of Rashida Tlaib. She's not even to the left of Rashida Tlaib. So she's not even the most leftist in the squad. In fact, obviously, Rashida Tlaib is probably the least popular. And there's a reason for that. It's because she's the most leftist. Even for her flaws are far less worse than AOC's. She's far more consistent than AOC is. And that's why she gets the most hate out of the squad from the establishment. And she gets buried. AOC don't do shit. Oh, recently she supposedly introduced a public banking bill. Supposedly. Somebody was trying to use this as the one I gotcha. See, I told you she does leftist things, which is cool. Like, that's actually something to be celebrated if it is true, if there is really a public banking bill. See, the problem with that is there's not an actual bill anywhere to be found. Nothing. There's nothing. And of course, you know, AOC is all about touting legislation that don't do a damn thing. Still can't figure out what a bill is. I've been looking for it for like the last 24 hours. Darren, you're right. It's funny. I just saw that. I was just about to say the same exact thing. He said Rashida probably did all the work for the bill. Yep. That sounds about right. That sounds 100% right. Because, you know, AOC is all about co-sponsoring somebody else's shit and pretending like it was hers. Just like she tried to co-opt UBI, right? Tulsi introduces a UBI, but obviously that's Yang's bread and butter. But Tulsi supported it during the election and prior to. This is actually a topic of discussion in Hawaii for a while now because of their ridiculously high inflation. Yang and the Yang gang love Tulsi because of that. And then as the pandemic comes, Tulsi had introduced UBI like weeks ago. Weeks before we even were thinking about quarantining. AOC when she sees how popular the idea is, all of a sudden, yeah, UBI, we gotta have UBI for sure. Yeah. But she was talking shit during the election about UBI, remember? Because Bernie's plan was federal jobs guarantee, and so she was riding that wave. You know, she's all about rhymes and coattails. So, Cole Dowdus, man, you're gonna have to pronounce that out for me because I don't know how to spell it. But the link I forwarded above was to an interview with Greg Palast detailing the destruction of election integrity in the United States since the turn of the millennium has been a bipartisan effort. That's true, even though I do have my problems with Greg Palast's presentation. Because during the primary, he's all about, yeah, man, Democrats are stealing it. This is how they're going to steal it. And then when the general election comes around, he pretends like it's only Republicans, which is clearly a marketing technique. And although I like the guy, and you know, he does do some really brilliant investigative research. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, that's not trying to solve the problem if you're trying to pretend it's one party or the other. You know, it is what it is. Niko, as black people under Biden and Harris, we will no longer need to waste time and energy with original thought. Condescending suburban white SJW Karens will tell us what to think. Oh, under Biden and Harris? I thought that was like, period. I thought that was always the case. Oh, I missed Sparky's? Oh, let me see if I can click it. No, it's another one. Oh, it didn't show up. Okay. You said thanks for that super chat, Sparky. Trump was canning Gina Haspel. Biden will keep her. I 100% believe that. I 100% believe you. But it's funny that you brought that up, Sparky, about the Karens telling us what to think. I was just thinking about yesterday. I'm like, bro, I just really have this disdain for YouTube socialists because it's basically just a bunch of like white liberals who think that they're socialists or communists. Like they like romanticize the idea of like USSR. They pretend to be smarter than they actually are. And then they use the plight of marginalized people and the desperation of marginalized people to virtue signal people. But then because it's really about the dollar, right? It's really about pretending, putting on that act. The moment that the opportunity presents itself, they tell us to once again vote for the people who are actually screwing people of color and who are the exact opposite of what socialism was supposed to be. That's what they do every single time. You ever noticed that, Griff? You don't get 1 million subscribers if you are actually a socialist. Like, you can't just be a socialist in rhetoric. You gotta be a socialist in rhetoric, policy. I'm not a socialist, by the way. I believe in a mixed economy. And I'm black, and Marx was a racist, so I'm not a socialist. Different discussion for a different day. But you don't get 1 million subscribers being an actual communist, because no way in your fucking life could you ever rationalize in your mind voting for Joe Biden. You know that, right? If anyone is telling you they're a socialist or a communist and they have 1 million subscribers, they're a liar. They are going to tell you to vote for, because it's about appeasing the Karens, as my good friend Sparky just said. Karens like pretending as if they are one of us. They like pretending like they're part of the proletariat. It's invigorating for them. And then when they get back into their house, they take their little communist uniform off, and then they go back to their room, put on their Louis Vuitton robe, and search for cruises for their next vacation on your dumbass dollar. Just saying.